It survived ship 26 static fired, but what was the test actually about? Starship survived another launch. When will it be ready for another flight? Starship is getting a massive heat shield update and it is ablative. My name is Ty. Welcome to What About It. Let's dive right in. Starship updates, things are only speeding up. Musk gives us a new Starship timeline. Masses are in full testing mode. We get a bird's eye view of Flight 4's aftermath and so much more. Want to find out how much more? Let's do this. Follow me. With Flight 4 finally behind us and Flight 5 to look forward to, let's examine some of the massive changes that SpaceX is making at Starbase. Today's journey kicks off at the orbital launch site. It's only been 1 week since this site saw the fiery inferno of Starship Flight 4. We'll start off at the ULM, or Orbital Launch Mount. It saw the most fire of any structure at the gateway to Mars during launch, so it is particularly interesting to inspect. Bring on the heat. These black burn marks indicate the locations that received the most heat during the launch, most notably the orbital launch mount deck and the sides of the legs. Suffered again. This was to be anticipated. There's still some work to do until all this is rapidly reusable. It also looks like the booster quick disconnect hood may have gotten a little toasty, but it appears to have done its job protecting the delicate systems within. This is quite an improvement over Flight 3 when the booster quick disconnect, or BQD, was badly damaged due to a lack of proper shielding. With that out of the way, they are one step closer to their goal of rapid reuse. Now let's pan up and look at the Orbital Launch and Integration Tower, or WELIT. Just slightly above and to the left of the WELM are the chopsticks. These are used to lift boosters onto the WELM and stack ships on top of boosters used for assembly. Not too complicated for now. However, they are essential as it makes Starship stacking much easier than with any other rocket. Thankfully, the chopsticks don't seem to have been damaged during the launch. We saw them move minutes after liftoff. This is in contrast to the last Starship flight, and it is likely due to the new pitch-over maneuver that SpaceX has opted to adopt. SpaceX calls it the pad avoidance maneuver for a reason. On Flight 4, the rocket went straight up for much longer rather than pitching over sooner. This was changed to eradicate many issues that were observed on Flight 3. The earlier pitch over on previous flights caused extensive damage to the launch deck as the Raptor engines weren't firing through the hole in the middle. Extensive gimbal needed for an early pitch caused the exhaust stream of the booster to hit all sorts of vital hardware on the WELM and the tower itself. This obviously wasn't very good for the launch deck, but one important piece of hardware in particular was of major concern with this maneuver: the booster quick disconnect. If you aren't familiar with the term, here's a quick explanation. The BQD is a component located at the back of the WELM. It is responsible for supplying power and propellant to the rocket while it is still on Earth. It detaches from the rocket just moments before liftoff and pulls away behind this shield to hide from the immense heating of 33 Raptors. As it turns out, it's incredibly hard to make anything strong enough to withstand the heat of the world's most powerful rocket at liftoff. This is why on Flight 3 the BQD was heavily damaged. When the rocket began the pitchover, it received so much heat and force from liftoff that the damage went beyond even the disconnect itself. It also damaged the delicate flex hoses inside. These flex hoses transport millions of pounds of propellant to the booster before any testing or launch can commence. They are very expensive, and any damage to the fuel-carrying components should be avoided at all costs. Because of this issue, the methane and liquid oxygen flex hoses were replaced after Flight 3. It is pretty clear that SpaceX needed to fix this problem if they want Starship to be rapidly reusable. This was one of the main reasons SpaceX chose the later pitch, and it seems to have worked quite well as we haven't seen any signs of major damage. I wouldn't be surprised if the new for the second tower looks radically different. It seems that the chopsticks as well as the BQD benefited from this maneuver. It is possible, however, that this new pitch over profile had the opposite effect on the ship quick disconnect further up on the tower. This is because if the Starship pitched over later, it would actually bring the engines closer to the ship's quick disconnect on liftoff. Let's take a look. Other than some missing insulation and a slightly crooked connector panel, the ship QD appears to have survived this launch intact. Although it is possible that the damage is more extensive than on the surface level, comparing it to the QD post-Flight 3, it appears to be in better shape. Hopefully SpaceX has moved past the days of an expendable ship quick disconnect, but we will have to wait and see if they replace anything before Flight 5. Moving down a bit, it appears that one piece of equipment didn't hold up quite as well on this flight. Fortunately, I am talking about the vertical tank farm. This has now shown us again that putting vertical tanks right next to the pad wasn't the best idea. The remaining liquid Oxygen tanks look like they were recently involved in a car crash. SpaceX is in the process of removing these tanks, so a few dents shouldn't matter. Hopefully, this tower of crushed cans will be gone soon, leaving us with an amazing view of the booster coming back to land on Flight 5. That's right, Musk has repeatedly talked about his plans of catching a super heavy booster as soon as Flight 5 in recent days. What do you think? Is it possible that SpaceX will do this? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of an amazing view, Tower 2 won't be blocked by anything. Let's see how that's coming along. Thanks to our friends at Redline Heli, we were able to get a good look at the progress SpaceX has been making on this new launch tower. Here you can see that SpaceX has begun filling the tower's pile cap with concrete. This will distribute the tower's massive weight onto the foundation piles that SpaceX drove deep down into the soil. Another thing we were able to spot is this. SpaceX is moving quicker than expected. These will be the first parts of the tower actually to go vertical, the tower's feet, so to speak. These pieces will make up the corners of the bottommost section of the tower. You can clearly see this section on Tower 1. This section needs to be much more robust than the other sections due to its proximity to the engines at liftoff and due to the fact that this first section carries the entire weight of the tower. Once this is done, we should start to see the sections getting stacked in quick succession. We even caught SpaceX bringing pieces of a huge new crane in since Tower 2 is preparing to go vertical. Let's take a look at the two segments that were still in Florida here until recently. They are gone. That's right. Just a few days ago SpaceX loaded the chopsticks and the two tower segments and some components on a barge and began shipping them off toward Starbase. These pieces are the last ones needed for the second tower at Starbase, and they should arrive sometime next week. But believe it or not, this wasn't the only tower news at the Cape. Even if it doesn't seem like it, work on the Starship program is still happening at Cape Canaveral, and this time we have some huge news. A second tower.
Déjà vu?
No, I'm not talking about Texas. Instead, I'm talking about a second tower at the Cape. The FAA recently released an environmental impact statement that included this and confirmed what we had already discussed here at WAI. Here's a map of all of SpaceX's proposed improvements to LC-39A. It includes a second tower.
What?
So unlike we had previously thought, SpaceX will build a second tower at LC-39A instead of one of its other proposed Florida launch facilities, such as SLC-40 or ULA's old SLC-37. But believe it or not, this isn't even the most surprising news. Check this out. If you look closely, you might notice something a bit odd about the label for this new tower.
Do you see it?
Yep, this isn't a launch
Tower.
In fact, this will specifically be a catch tower, similar to what we have speculated about in the past.
So we were right? Well, maybe.
It might turn out to be more complicated than that. After all, Musk has stated they will try to catch the booster on Flight 5, which would be at Starbase. So if Musk is willing to risk their only working launch pad to test a booster landing, why would they still plan on building a catch-only tower at the Cape? Well, there is one possibility. Regulations, good old paperwork. It's possible that SpaceX does actually want another launch pad at the Cape, but regulations are slowing down the build process. So maybe this tower will be a catch tower just until they get approval for another pad. This is only speculation. It could truly be a catch-only tower, possibly even for ship landing tests, but as always, we will have to wait and see. Next up is masses. This place has seen its first massive static fire, and there is a twist to it. Back at Starbase, Masses has seen quite a bit of action recently as it is becoming the most advanced test site for the most advanced rocket. So what on earth is flapless? Whatever it actually is doing here at Masses, Ship 26, and as usual, SpaceX's overall plans for Ship 26 are still a mystery. But we do know one thing now: its engines work. Well, technically we already knew that after a static back in October. This ship is old now. We've seen all its engines roar to life again. In this case though, Ship 26 likely doesn't even matter. But Felix, Ship 26 was just static fired. So why wouldn't it matter? Excellent question. Well, it's because the main party in this test probably wasn't the ship but the test stand itself. We followed the construction of this new test stand for the past few months now, watching SpaceX dig out and install this incredible piece of hardware equipped with nothing less than a flame diverter. What a novel concept! It is likely that SpaceX didn't want to risk more advanced flight hardware, such as Ship 30 or 31, on this new stand. This test stand has now seen its first action, and it appears as though everything went well during the test. The stand should now be ready for a steady stream of ships to be driven over and tested. Mass production demands mass testing. I personally can't wait to see all the amazing tests SpaceX will conduct here on this new test stand. We have a perfect view already, of course. Now that testing was completed, it was time for Ship 26 to roll back to the Sanchez site. This happened on the night of the 11th, putting Ship 26 back in the rocket garden. And from here, Ship 26 will do something.
Who knows? Honestly?
This ship has been such a mystery that at this point it wouldn't surprise me if they put a nuclear reactor on it and launched it to the moon to defend us from an alien attack. What do you think SpaceX's plans for Ship 26 are? Leave your theories in the comments below. Of course, SpaceX wasn't going to focus on testing just one thing at masses. Turning our attention to where Ship 26 was, we have Booster 14.1. The day after Ship 26 was tested, the teams at masses decided to start prepping the booster test tank 14.1 for its own testing because rest is optional at Starbase. To accommodate the testing, the can crusher's lid was lifted on top of the tank with a crane and hooked up to it. We should soon see cables being attached to the lid to begin testing. These cables will be hooked to hydraulic pistons. These will pull on the booster to simulate the intense stresses of a launch. These tests are performed to validate new construction methods. In this case, it appears SpaceX will also be using the can crusher to test the stresses of landing. If you look here, you can see that SpaceX has added some sort of device near the lift pins of this test tank. These devices have a piston on them that is designed to apply force on this tank's lifting pins similar to those that it would experience during a catch attempt. So perhaps unlike previous test tanks, such as those used to test new designs, this tank was built to verify the existing booster design. Now before we continue with the news, we've looked into our channel metrics, and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help us improve the channel even further by double-checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. And while you're at it, give us a like and become a WAI supporter. Exclusive SpaceX updates. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, including satellite, aerial, and ground photos of SpaceX's progress and countless other extras. On top, no matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. Elon Musk update. Now let's talk about a massive update given by Elon Musk regarding the next flight and even further flights after number 5. He recently did a gaming live stream, and it seems he can't even stop talking about Starship when he's gaming. Unless something comes up that we think is problematic, we'll try to bring the booster back and catch it with the giant Mechazilla arms. He went in depth on some exciting aspects of Flight 5 during the stream. The most important change is to Flight 5 hardware, specifically to the ship. As you may know, during Flight 4, Ship 29 faced some issues with its heat shield, which thankfully didn't end the mission. However, having your rocket's flaps melt off mid-flight is far from optimal. According to Elon, SpaceX has a brilliant solution to this predicament. Instead of deciding to switch from reusable silica foam tiles to the non-reusable ablative heat shields that are more standard in the industry, SpaceX has other plans. Despite rumors coming from SpaceX that this might be the case, it seems that they've decided to take a hybrid approach instead. SpaceX has begun stripping Ship 30 of its heat tiles. What are they replacing them with?
Ablative tiles.
The even stranger part is that the original heat tiles are then reinstalled on top of the ablative tiles. Well, you may be wondering why they would do this, as it does add a lot of weight to the rocket, but it all comes down to reusability. Despite ablative heat shields not being reusable, replacing a couple of burned-away ablative heat tiles is better than losing the ship because a heat tile came off. It adds extra redundancy to the entire system. Getting a redundant system crew-rated will be much easier. Although this will add more weight to the rocket, it will also make it one of the safest rockets ever, which seems like a worthy trade-off.
Elon Musk didn't stop there, however.
He also outlined a new flight profile for Booster 12 on Flight 5. As he had teased earlier, SpaceX plans to catch the world's largest and heaviest rocket on Mechazilla during the next flight.
Now we know how.
After the boost back, they plan to send the booster on a trajectory toward the Gulf of Mexico. Similar to previous flights, they will then check all the systems, and only if everything looks nominal, the booster will change course and head towards the launch site. This means that if the booster encounters any issues, SpaceX can immediately abort the catch and crash the booster into the sea. SpaceX wants to come as close as possible to everything functioning properly because according to Musk, Starship only has about a 50% chance of successfully landing on the tower arms anyway. When speaking about the launch tower, it seems necessary to mention the launch tower at LC-39A in Florida. Musk thought the same and also mentioned this tower. He stated that SpaceX is planning to complete its first Starship launch from Florida halfway through 2025. Wow, okay, that is soon. The last thing Musk mentioned in his stream concerns the first launch of a Starship to the Red Planet. Now we're talking. He said that their plan is to have a Starship headed to Mars in about 3 years.
That's insane.
This would be an uncrewed flight, but it would pave the way for future astronauts to follow. It would probably be closer to 4 years due to the launch window to Mars, but there is one grainy problem. Take it with a grain of salt, or two, just to be safe. It is possible that this prediction is Elon time, and is optimistic at best. This would mean that SpaceX would likely need to wait nearly 2 years for the next window. Whether SpaceX sends a Starship to Mars in 3 or 5 years, we are getting closer and closer to Mars because of the Starship program. Exciting times are ahead, no matter what happens at Starbase or in Florida. We'll keep reporting for you. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button. Subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm, and it helps us immensely.